I do think one of the things we do great is we have a really strong process. People understand like what we're doing, who's working on it, and if it's on track or not.
We do have this embedded DNA of learning. You have to be learning in order to improve,
right?
But you also have to be honest with yourself.
The aspect of communication that isn't just between us and our client, but it's how are we enabling communication for them internally with stakeholders.
I feel like alignment, do they think in the way that you think in terms of your goals of how the business is run? All right, well, how's it going, Josh?
Yeah, it's going good.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's been a good week. It's Friday. Excited to film this podcast.
It's been a couple weeks.
Yeah, that's for sure. I don't know. We have Mental Health Awareness Month. We just finished up.
That was good.
That was fun. We did a little bit of team bonding. We brought the team into the office. We did. I made some smoothies. They're pretty good. They're pretty good smoothies.
I was a little suspicious, but it was good.
What made it suspicious, man? It was just fruit and a little bit of juice. There was nothing crazy in there.
It's true. It was good.
Then we had a guest speaker talk about mental health and self-care. I loved that. I feel like one of the big learnings for me was, how people always talk about like you need to find your purpose in life. And I love the frame that she used, which was like really what you need to find is like, what are your key values? And so as long as like, what you're doing in life and what you're doing in work aligns with those values, I feel like that was a change of frame for me. Because whenever I've heard people talk about like, you got to find your purpose, it's almost like the work that you do has to like have this like purpose. I think like Tom's shoes, you buy one pair of shoes and they give a pair away for free. And it's like very purpose driven, but I think the new frame for me was like, if purpose is really about values, then if you're like delivering great work for clients and you can feel like that's rewarding to like see that work come to life and that you're helping them and that's part of your values, like that is also purpose. So anyway, I like the guest speaker. What'd you have? Did you hear anything from the guest speaker that you were
I mean, she did say something about how a lot of people chase, it wasn't her words, but it was like chasing happiness as the purpose when that is actually fleeting or it actually won't get you to where you want to get to. And so when she was talking about those values and what you're talking about, it's almost like this, it's like a code of behavior or alignment that you're on the right thing. You did share with me a long time ago how you have your list of things that you always wish to buy or like strive for. And that kind of stuck with me for, it was probably a couple of years now. But, things like being a good dad or, being a great partner, like all those things. I almost feel like that reminded me of when you shared that with me. So it was, which makes a lot of sense. It's less about the outcome. It's more about like how you're feeling in the moment.
It's so true. Like I have goals that are written down that I reflect on every now and then. They're in a notebook on my bedside table. And they aren't like, climb a mountain, that, it's not like become a millionaire. Like those aren't my goals. Like my goals are things like, be a good male role model and a great father to my children, be a loving and caring spouse. When it comes to things like money, it's like, I have a goal to like give back to my community. And one of the things that came out of that mental health speaker is just like, you can give back at any and every level. Like you can give back with your time, but if you have money, you can give money, but you can give money $50. It doesn't have to be, get your name on the side of a building at the college or university that you went to, right? Like there's different levels as long as you feel like, I'm living out my values, I'm achieving my goals. It's like I have a goal to like travel. Well, that's a very broad statement. Like I can travel to Rochester, Minnesota or Red Wing and rent an Airbnb and it might cost me a couple $100 for a weekend. And that's still travel. I'm still living out my goals. It doesn't mean I have to take some bougie trip around the world on like the most fabulous, airline, right? So anyway, that's what's going on. You asked, I just had that like in my head about, mental health awareness. And we ended with some yoga sessions and some massage therapy, which, man, great. I got some hard elbows in my shoulders, but it feels good today.
I needed that.
Didn't feel good at the time. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was, I mean, we do this, we've done this a few years in a row, right? So, yeah, it is good to just have that space. You know, it's not common every day to be able to talk about those things, think about those things, also have smoothies in the morning, you know, so it's a nice little,
it was a fun day
change. Yeah. So I really enjoyed it myself. And you know, when, you know, those like purpose type of conversations, I think about those all the time. You know, my kids, they're 2-year-old twins. Mm-hmm. Today was their last day for this school year, where they're going to take a break for the summer and then go back. And, you know, I think about being a great dad, being a great parent. It's like always thinking about it. And it's like, what are my values? Like, how should I be a good dad? And
what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
Right?
And I think that also, you know, applies in so many different areas of my life, you know, I'd say, from the different endeavors that I'm taking on to being here. I mean, we also have like something that I feel has been so impressive to me here at Augurian has been the core values. Like, you just hung them up like just the other day.
Well, they'd been hung up.
I mean, that's true.
And then we moved the office and we had to put them back on the wall. So it's not like we just hung them up. They've been up. But
that's true.
They're in a new spot.
But I mean, we are very intentional about the values.
Yeah.
We put that in hiring, you know, from how we treat our clients, how we treat ourselves, you know, and you read about how you should do these things. And I think we've been doing as best of a job as we can.
Yeah.
And so that would lead to good outcomes for our clients, for ourselves. I mean, if you don't enjoy what you're doing, I mean, that's, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's true. And, you know, I think they're more than just like having them up on the wall. They have to be alive and well in the organization. And there's some kind of traditions that we have where they show up, right? We give kudos on Monday morning meetings, but we also do the kudos sessions through the Slack channel. And everybody, whenever they give a kudos, they always like tag the person with like, you know, whatever that it could be the have fun value. It could be the drive success value. It could be the build innovation value. Anyway, feel like they're alive and well, and that's pretty awesome. And just excited that we can continue to like bring those values into play with our clients even.
Yeah. I mean, these are, you know, this is, you know, what we're talking about today. We're going to be talking about red flags right, with agencies. And
let's go.
I feel like these red flags are sometimes symptoms of possibly not having values that you're sticking true to, or maybe don't even exist.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen and heard a lot of like different horror stories.
Yeah.
I mean, you're in a lot of conversations. I've been chatting with a lot of different people. Like, what's been some stories since we last spoke that you've heard?
I mean, so I do a lot of like the first sales calls. And so obviously in those calls, I'm asking people like, what, you know, you've been working with an agency? Yes. Okay. And how's that gone? And what have you liked or what haven't you liked? And I get a lot of feedback on a lot of different topics. So like one of the most common ones is just around communication, right? And so when you think about like our confidence framework, communication is one of the elements, the pillars of the confidence framework. But the way that like plays out, I was in a conversation last week and they were basically saying the agency said to us, hey, we'll get that back to you by end of day on Friday or whatever, right? And so then the weekend goes by, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday goes by, and the client literally had to reach out and say like, hey, you mentioned that you were going to get that back to us on Friday. Like, can you give me a status update? And then like the agency is like, oh yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, we'll get that to you by Friday, right? And it's just like that kind of stuff I think is very like prevalent. I find in the conversations that I'm having is just like basic professionalism and communication can sometimes be an issue. So I don't know. Communication is one of the things that I hear about all the time.
So I can empathize. Like earlier on in my career, you know, I would try to go above and beyond on some of the things that I'm doing, and then it would end up taking a little longer than the expectations that I set.
Yeah.
But what I started to, not that I started to learn, but what I realized is that there are moments where some of the things that you are needing to deliver they need to then deliver a piece of that for something else. Mm-hmm. And so when you let them down in that point, you end up breaking some level of trust.
Right.
And at least with working as in an agency, I mean, it doesn't even have to be agency. It's like there's this promise that you're making between two people.
Yeah.
And if you break that promise, I mean, what else are you now, not doing?
Right.
You're not going to do something simple as that.
Yeah.
Which is, in my opinion, a big red flag. If that happens very consistently, then something is not happening, whether it's the management or maybe there's a lack of structure or process.
Yeah.
Who knows?
And I'm not saying that like at Augurian we got it all solved and we're like awesome. I just did a post on LinkedIn about this idea that like when things are like in a little bit of like uncertainty, right? So like we're not sure if something is working or isn't working. Like what we need to do is like have a high degree of communication. So when I think about that, it's like, okay, we are going to implement some new campaign type, or we're going to, execute on some new strategy. Mm-hmm. Well, we not only need to tell the client like, hey, this is the new strategy, this is a new campaign type, but we need to tell them, why are we recommending it? And then once we implement it or execute on it, like how long is it going to really take for us before we're going to start seeing early indicators of if it's working or if it isn't? And then what, even like to the point of like, what are those early indicators? So that the client can even just like understand, okay, we're doing this new thing. I get it. And we probably won't know the results of it for another 2 weeks or a month or whatever it is. Depends if it's paid or SEO, stuff goes faster or slower. Like we may not know the results of this for 3 months if it's like a big SEO initiative, right? But we need to like let them know that so that they're not like hanging on like this week 2, like, and is it working? Sure. Yeah. No, like we won't know that for another 12 weeks. And so we need to communicate that. And then we need to say like, and here's what we would expect to start happening. We should start to see like these changes. And so then they can start paying attention too to see if they see those changes. So it's like, it's communication, it's like education. But yeah, I feel like, when I'm talking to somebody and it's like baseline professionalism, you say you're going to get something done and you don't, which it's okay if it runs over or whatever, but you just send the email on Friday that says like, hey, I told you that this was going to get done. I'm running into these things. I think I won't be able to deliver it until early next week or whatever, but at least you're like communicating. So you asked me about a red flag. Communication is probably number one.
And it's such a common one. And, you bring up the checking in communication too. We think a lot about maybe there's like a monthly or a weekly meeting or status update that you have, but there's sometimes a lot of time in between. Yeah. And so when I think about poor communication, I mean, yes, baseline, you set the expectation and you get it done then, or you let them know, hey, something's not working or it's not going to happen. And also in reality, if there's let's just say, for example, if I'm doing something and someone's working on something for me and I'm very curious about it, I have this like curiosity, sometimes anxiousness. How is it going so far? Like, do we have to pivot? Like, And so there is this level of, I don't know if it's angst is the right word, but that is important for, us to think about, for me to think about whenever I'm delivering it for someone. Yeah. They're probably thinking about this. So I should just check in. Yeah. Say, hey, this is what I'm seeing right now. We're on track for this to work or not. Yeah. And I just feel like if there's like a vacuum of information where like you're not communicating that and now all of a sudden people start to like that's where like that confidence gets eroded. So when we're talking about the confidence framework, like how do you have confidence? It's when your partner is like communicating with you and telling you like this is what we're doing. And I do think, another red flag is around like process, right? Where,
I'll be having a sales conversation. They're just like, I just don't understand kind of what they're even working on, right? And where they're at with things. And so, I do think one of the things we do great is we have a really strong process where people really, it's very transparent. There's a high degree of accountability. People understand like what we're doing, who's working on it, and if it's on track or not. And so I do think that you can solve some of what you're talking about, like that anxiety of like, what is it exactly that they're doing? It's like, no, like go into the program workbook, go to the tab that shows you like what sprint we're in, and then look at who's working on what sprints and if they're on track or off track. And now that you've kind of been able to solve for that like underlying anxiety because they actually have a source of truth that they can go to themselves without even having to send an email to remind themselves like, hey, this is what we agreed on, this is what we're working on, and we're on track, So I do think that there is like, you can solve for communication either by like sending that email or by creating processes and structures that you share with clients. And as you kind of build that muscle, it like eliminates a ton of that anxiety.
Yeah, this goes into another red flag I think of, and they are connected. And it's when you're working with an agency or a partner or a consultant and you're not seeing any improvements to the process. Like everything is staying the same.
Yeah.
Even if you've provided feedback and you still see the same level of communication or the same type of report when you said, hey, I don't get this part. And so to me, I feel like a red flag is if you're not seeing any improvements to what they're doing. We're constantly looking at our reporting to make them more refined.
Yep.
Even in the workbooks, even, I'll take notes for myself if I didn't get the outcome I wanted in this interaction. I'm like, okay, what did I do there?
Yeah.
And how do I improve next time? And, we do have this embedded DNA of learning, right? You have to be learning in order to improve.
Right.
But you also have to be honest with yourself that, hey, maybe this isn't as good as I thought when I built it. Got to be humble. Yeah. I'm not going to be perfect and get 100 every single time. And so, I do also think that red flag with the communication and also just like, reporting is another one that I'm sure we can
get into.
We can talk a lot about. But seeing like a lack of improvement in the process or in their communication over the life of the engagement, I think is a red flag.
I think so too. I would just say, it is also on us as the agency to like help clients understand that we aren't just like really expensive order takers and that like we have processes that we've built that we know like get the job done. And so it's also on us to kind of push back sometimes when it's like, hey, we need to have a meeting about this. And you're just like, no, we don't have to have a meeting about this because we aren't going to be able to share anything, because this was just launched a week ago and we just don't have enough data yet. So it's like, I think there is a side to like on the agency side where we also continuously need to be like taking that feedback. Okay, maybe we should rethink about, our cadence or our process or whatever, but we also need to be able to say like, no, we know that like a meeting about this today is not going to help. It's not going to do anything. Like we just went through a site migration. It's like, well, we need to have a 4 a.m. meeting, because that's when the site goes live. And it's just like, well, but when the site goes live, we still won't even, like Google has to re-index stuff. Like we still won't even have like anything really tangible to be able to tell you right when the shift, besides that, like it's not working.
Yeah.
Like it's completely broken. So like, do we need to have a meeting or can you just know that we'll take a peek and if it's broken, you'll hear from us. But if not, we're going to wait until we actually have some data to share with you. So that's all I'm saying is like, as the agency, we need to make sure that we are educating and informing clients on kind of how things work, how we're thinking about it so that we can like have that alignment.
So when you're saying like order takers, are you meaning it's important that you're working with someone that just doesn't always say yes? Like if something feels wrong or it's just not aligned, that you need to have trust in that partner to be like, hey,
or they need
I'm just going to tell it like it is. Like,
this
is not the right.
Candor. They need to have a strong point of view on stuff. I mean, one of the red flags I would say is when agencies don't show up with like new ideas. And so I hear that too all the time, right? Which is like, I show up at meetings and me, client, I'm the one who's showing up and saying, hey, should we be trying this? Or I saw that thing that came out about the, SEO stuff that got released, like the leak, what, how is that going to impact us? Like agencies should be the ones who are like coming to clients and saying like, hey, I think we should try this new campaign type that was just launched, or we've been using this campaign type with this other type of client, and I think it could benefit you in this way. We'd like to try it. Versus on the client side, people feeling like they have to show up with all the ideas, and then the agency's like, oh yeah, good, we'll try. We'll make a note of that and we'll try it and get back to you. That's what I'm talking about as an expensive order taker. So anyway, like the lack of ideas and thought leadership is another big red flag. And then you mentioned reports.
Yeah, that's a big one.
That's probably the another like biggest one. And then like alignment around goals. Man, I have stories about both of these things. So like when it comes to reports, a lot of times there's agencies that just send this like 5-page report with green arrows that point up and red arrows that point down. And it's just like, it gets spit out every month and there's your monthly report.
Yeah.
And I feel like, there is a big difference between reports and reporting. And like reporting is where you're like interpreting that report. It's where you're deriving insights from that report, right? And I feel like that is where I hear a lot of times, like they send me a report, but I don't know what's important on the report. I don't know what it's saying. I don't know, like what changes should be made based on the data that I'm seeing. So if, you find yourself in that spot where your agency isn't like actually digesting that report, orienting you to like what you should be looking at, what's important in this report, what are the insights that we as an agency are deriving from this, and then like how is that then those insights like generating new recommendations? Like if you're not getting that, that's a huge red flag.
Yeah, I mean that is something I had to learn, through my journey. When I was, doing organic or doing SEO, at first it was like you create this report and you really want to make sure it's designed right and it fits and you've got all the numbers and you have the arrows that tell you up or down.
Yeah.
And then as you present that more often, I mean, you start to learn, well, one, the stakeholder or the person listening to that report is not in that data every single day like you are. So they're baseline, they're not going to get the metrics you are used to.
Right.
And then, two, because of that, at the end of the day, every report needs to drive an action, like a decision.
Right.
And so, Avinash, who I used to follow quite a bit, he would always call these like data pukes. You're just giving me a bunch of numbers.
I love that.
I literally don't know what these mean.
Yeah.
And I have to, is this going to help me take an action today or not?
Right.
And so that's where those insights is so key.
Yeah.
I've seen so many reports, and honestly, I have my own reports that are kind of like that too. Because for myself. But you have to be able to translate that to the person that's reading it.
Right. Exactly.
In terms of how does this affect my business?
Yep. Yeah. And we've like taken it one step further and decided that instead of actually going through the reports in the monthly meeting, we are sending what we call like a pre-meeting insight, which is like, hey, here's the report and here's everything that we see in the report and here's what we think is important and here are some of our recommended next steps. And we send that before we meet.
Okay.
So then our clients have the chance to read through that, digest it, understand like what we're looking at, what we're recommending. And then when we actually get into the meeting and we're face to face, we can have a really thoughtful kind of like deep discussion about, okay, you saw our recommendations, you saw where they're coming from. Does that sound right? Is that in alignment with like goals and what we're trying to achieve? Like so we're taking like the meeting time, the face-to-face time, and we're prioritizing those types of conversations versus like, we have an hour-long meeting a month, and 30 minutes of it is me reading a report to you. Man, so like we've done away with that. Yeah. So reporting for me is much different than reports. So that's another huge red flag. And then lastly, I kind of alluded to like the alignment side of things. Okay. And that's just like, here's an anecdote. Like we did a free diagnostic for it was like a assisted living, right, complex. So, 55 and over, and then as you age, you get into like different living situations. So it's like for elderly people as they progress. And like we start digging into their Google Ads, and we see that like they're spending $4,000 on video clicks in video games, right? And so like when we think about just like the basics of alignment, it's like there's a way for you to say like, don't show my ads in video games, right? And on gaming platforms. And so they're getting, teenagers, and that's the other thing, they didn't have like the age, like demographics dialed in. And so now you got, 16-year-olds who are trying to play a game that are like, get this ad out from in front of me, and they're ending up clicking on the ad, and this like assisted living complex is paying for those things. So like that's painful. This is a super painful example, but like when we think about like alignment and thinking about like who are we trying to advertise to, and where do they hang out? Like there's just even just simple settings that can get missed, that can like be complete waste of money. So alignment on goals.
I mean, we've seen a lot of situations where, when we would look at some ad accounts, there weren't a lot of negative search terms. Like they weren't even excluding certain things. And, those are actions that stem from like a process again. I mean, it comes back to process. Yeah. And also, I feel like alignment, it also means like, do they think in the way that you think in terms of your goals or how the business is run? Yeah. If you have a company that is, let's just say in e-commerce, it's about the transactions and the repeat orders. Yep. And you want your agency to think like that, and the people that are buying those, because now all of their strategies, tactics sharpen to, okay, how do we get those types of things? Yeah. So, a lot of times, my depth has been in SEO for a while. And when you're optimizing a page, there's like different levels. There's some people that just think about the keywords. Just, okay, put them in the right places and stuff them in there. Yeah. But that only gets you so far. Maybe your rankings improve, and then all of a sudden they're on your landing page and they're not converting. Well, was that useful or not? I mean, you can argue. And so really it's when you align yourself to what the company is about and who they're going after, that is very important, because now I'm thinking, okay, well, if I put myself in that person's shoes, why are they saying this is the language that they're using? Mm-hmm. And I also need to consider, what's the page experience like? When you sandwich those together, then you get great SEO performance. Oftentimes that page is used for paid ads. Yeah. So that also works there too. And so you just sort of win, and all of the activities start to align. And so, I feel like that alignment is huge. Yeah. And I think that's also a big word, like alignment in terms of goals, alignment strategies, alignment tactics, alignment values. Mm-hmm. I think that's a big thing too.
Yeah, for sure. And like unpacking the business knowledge that clients have is like a huge piece to this, right? So just the other day, we were looking at, it was a client that sells certain things very seasonal, right? In the sense that like, if you buy this you need to buy it between the month of January and March. If you buy it post March and you like put it in the ground, it's not gonna grow. It's not gonna work, right? And so all of a sudden we'd like uncovered this like extra piece of business knowledge, which is like, well, if we're gonna like be prioritizing our paid media campaigns, we definitely don't want to be advertising things that really people shouldn't even be buying. Why would we advertise something in June when we're saying you really only should buy this between January and March, right? Yeah. And so it just like that level of detail and business knowledge, that's where you get like that really good alignment.
So, we're talking about all these like different red flags. You have to improve on those. What do you feel like what does good look like?
Yeah.
When you're working with an agency. Like how do you picture that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like, I guess I'm biased, right? So I think about our confidence framework. I think about our processes. So really it's like confidence framework, strategy, process, data, communication. Yeah. So you start with strategy, and it is about unpacking that business knowledge. It's about like that sophisticated onboarding document so that we can really like understand the business as best that we can. And then pair our understanding of the business with the tools that we have to like find the right audiences at the right time and get in front of them, at the right time, at the right cost when it comes to paid, right? And so strategy is like the first part of that, and then that has to get agreed upon. Like that, once we say like this is what,
it's like alignment, right?
That's the alignment. Like this is what we think we need to do. We've audited. Here are the prioritized list of the things we think we need to do. Are you in agreement? Yes? Okay. So that means we agree that over the next quarter, we're going to work on these 6 things. And it's going to take us this amount of time, and here's who's responsible. And boom, all of a sudden that gets plugged into a process, plugged into a workbook, where now you, client, can go in and say, okay, here are those 6 things that we agreed upon. Here's who's responsible. Are they on track or off track? And now all of a sudden, we have developed an aligned strategy. We have a place where everybody can see transparently what we're working on, and there's a high degree of accountability. And then we start taking those actions, and all that starts happening, and then we're communicating. We've done this. Here's when we should start seeing that play out in the data, and here's what we're looking for in the data. And then we just have to have a really good, trusted, agreed upon source of truth, so that we're not coming and showing up with some data and then you're like, well, but that's not what it says in HubSpot or Salesforce. Like we can't have 2 sets of data, so we need to have like strong alignment on what is our agreed upon trusted source of truth. And then as those things get executed and as we're communicating, hey, that in the next 2 weeks we should see this type of change, now all of a sudden, that's what good looks like. It's where a client feels super confident because they understand what the strategy is. They understand who's working on it. If they're on track or off track, they understand what they should be looking for. They have a trusted source of truth. And then there's communication. There's like just a high degree of communication. So that's what I think good looks like.
Yeah. I mean, communication is really what binds them all together, right? I mean, that's because you need to have communication during that strategy phase.
Yep.
Make sure that communication leads to alignment and then action. And then you've got to have communication about the data, like the considerations, all of those things. And then process, I mean, that's internal and external communication.
Right.
Process is not just about us delivering the work, during that time, but it's also how are the team members working together and communicating with this process. And so, and I totally agree with you on that, leading to the confidence.
Another big piece about the communication is like, we also need to enable clients to be able to have what they need to carry those stories and those messages into their organization. So we need to see ourselves as an extension of their team. A lot of times our clients are asking us, can you help me with a report that I can take to the C-suite that just gives them at a high level, like, is it working? Isn't it working? What are we working on and why, right? And so there's that aspect of communication that isn't just between us and our client, but it's how are we enabling communication for them internally with stakeholders. So anyway, that's what good looks like.
Okay, so that's what good looks like.
Yep.
So we talked about all the different red flags that we see and hear all the time.
Yeah, bad communication, no ideas, bad alignment, reports versus reporting, like showing your work and having a process. Yeah, lots of different red flags.
Yeah. So, we've got a couple more weeks to our next podcast.
Yeah.
I was curious, what are you excited about?
I don't know. I've been doing some experimentation myself. So with the LinkedIn content that I've been doing, I'm excited to kind of figure out like what's working and what isn't. But it's really hard because, people don't always like engage or comment. But then I had a call yesterday where the person was like, oh, I've been loving your content. And I'm just like, well, I've never seen you like give it a like or anything. And then, I'm kind of a lurker, but it's great. So I'm trying to like decipher, is it okay that it doesn't get all these comments? Are people still seeing it? And is that good? So that's something I've been thinking about. And then I've got this new like marketing moment audio message that I'm going to start recording at a pretty high cadence, and I want to start publishing those. So that's something that you can look forward to, is me riffing on books I'm reading and conversations that I'm having. So anyway, the marketing moment is coming.
I mean, I listen to it all the time. You know, I do listen to it, and it's pretty good. And you've got a voice for that stuff.
Yeah, so. Right. All right. How about you? What are you focused on, or what are you looking forward to here in the next couple weeks?
Yeah, I mean, this is something I've been doing a lot of lately. It's been connecting with other marketing leaders.
Yeah.
Meeting all across the country and having calls with them every single week just to get to know them. It's been really fascinating. It is also part of my mission to get out of my comfort zone. So that is part of those. That's one of those things. So we also have this podcast, the Small but Mighty Marketing Podcast, and that's been really good too, and out of my comfort zone too. So
I don't know. You seem like things. A natural to me.
Hey, I'm trying my best.
Yeah, there you go.
So I've got those two things that I am really excited to keep working on because I know. Well, one, it's fun to do them.
Yeah,
and two, it is also just great to meet people too. Yeah. So. See how we can help each other out. And so that's what I'm really excited about.
Cool. I agree. This has been fun. I'm looking forward to the next one.
All right.
All right. Cool. See you.